All right, welcome everybody. Anybody that's here today? This is Mr. Rob G. This is a Social Dig Live. I just really wanted to come in here and talk to you guys for a minute and kind of break the ice. First live stream here, first stream of 2023. So I want to wish Happy New Year's to everybody out there. Hope you had a great New Year. Disclosure: what are we looking at? So we have the NDA 2023, NDAA 2023 passed recently. Definitely grateful for that. Means we can get those whistleblowers to finally come out and tell their stories without being ridiculed or held accountable by the powers that be. Um, yeah, like I said, I'm just here. This is Friday Night Live. My guy Mateo's out on vacation, but he'll be back for sure. A couple things I wanted to go over. Just the mission for the social dig and what we plan on doing here. The mission is to push issues that directly affect humanity and socially brainstorm on ideas to help direct humanity on a positive path. So the outlook here is everyone is human. The idea is that you leave who you are at the door. You come in as a human being, regardless from what walk of life you may be from. And let's get together and brainstorm on how we can get humanity to progress forward in a positive manner. So there's a lot of things going on right now. Obviously, if we leave it up to the powers that be, then they do exactly what they just did, which is delay a report. For it was indeterminate how long it was going to be delayed. But they finally did release it. And as we thought, there was nothing in there of any really substance. However, there were a couple things there that I wanted to look at and talk about. A couple things that kind of, resonated with me, I'll say. So, what we have actually, we'll go over two things here. Two things that I saw. Uh, UAP continue to pose a flight safety risk. So we've had over the last 2 years, numerous pilots come out and say how they're seeing these things every day. Ryan Graves, as a matter of fact, that is seeing these things every single day. Um, okay, so this is going to pose safety risk for them, which we obviously care about our pilots, our military pilots. But then if you look at the other side of it, we also have commercial pilots out there that are seeing these things as well, as been reported within the last 6 months. So actually, a huge uptick in reportings the last 6 months from commercial pilots. Now, with that being said, the part that resonates with me, I guess, is more of the okay. So I have, mother, father, daughter, granddaughter, who would be taking these flights. And problem is, I wouldn't want them to realize what's going on at 35,000 feet. So let's just be serious here. We have a situation where there are so many flights, so many airplanes in the sky each day, just commercial flights. Forget everything else. Let's think about what that means as far as the daily safety of just us as citizens. It's just something that resonates with me, something that I think about all the time. I just had my girlfriend went on a flight. I had to take her off to the LAX airport this morning, and this thought went through my mind. I mean, she always hoped that she'd be safe, and I know that she will. But at the same time, if we have these things flying around our sky, who's to say, or who's to say when the incident happens? Who's to say actually that it hasn't happened already? If you think about it, look at the China. It was a Malaysian flight. I know it was MH370, just disappeared. You had the China airline flight that they had caught on closed caption camera This plane did the straight nosedive from 35,000 feet. FAA looks at these things, they come back to us later and they tell us, okay, yeah, this is the reason why this happened. However, do we really know why those planes go down? I mean, it only makes you think about it when the government tells you that there continues to be an exponential risk to our pilots here. So, some of the things I wanted to talk about. The other thing in the UAP report was balloon like entities. That actually resonated with me as well, because if you've watched any of the previous videos, actually the video on my sighting, you will definitely see that the entities in that video, I could describe them as balloon like. You know, they definitely weren't birds, as we outlined in the video. You saw a real close up image. Actually, pretty sure I have the image here, which I will share. Actually, it's a few slides here. Okay, so not really the greatest. You can't zoom in on this. Let me actually get to a different part of this presentation. Yeah, so this is essentially what I filmed there. Now, if you look at that, not birds, obviously, not balloons, not any type of drones that I'm aware of. I mean, if you've seen any drones that look like this, please show me and please direct me to where these are, because I would like to close that case. Essentially, what I can describe to you is that these objects, just from my own vision, you know, not looking through the camera at all, looking through my own vision, I did not see the protruding object sticking out of the top. So from my vision looking up as they flew directly overhead, I saw the white part of the body, which appeared to be circle. I'll call it circle, semicircle. And then below it had a black pipe like object sticking out. Each one of them had this as they drifted overhead. So if we have things like that in the sky, you know, this, if you saw that in the sky, rather, and you had to categorize it or put it in some specific category, and balloon like entities was one of those categories, I could see this going into that category. So, what does that do? What does that do for me then? It actually gives me a little bit of hope as far as how this process is going, the vetting of these UAP. And it just seems like they actually, whoever's working this out or looking at these incursions might actually be taking it seriously, and that's just from my observation. Why do I believe that? Now I believe that because they mentioned UA or balloon-like entities prior to, or I'm sorry, after I actually released my video. So it just resonated. The two are similar. So are they talking about the objects that I saw? Are they talking about the objects that I showed you that other people have seen? I've showed you other sightings. Um, what does this mean? So is it that they see these things but they don't understand what they are truly? I mean, I can buy that in this scenario because balloon like entities wasn't anything that was ever brought up in any of the previous reports. So it would lead me to believe that they also see these things and they're just not sure what they are. Now, what I can tell you is that based on my own sighting, that these things aren't of this world. Now they completely disappeared. Now I know I did a pre-recorded video on this. I wanted to actually kind of speak to it live and actually answer any questions if anyone had any questions about this sighting. Um, so what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and click through. Now, this sighting here, so just kind of reading it over. So it shows sighting the four objects moving from north to southeast. Now, as I was walking, something caught my eyes. I looked up, I saw an airliner. Above that, I saw four images that were moving from north to southeast. It appeared the objects were traveling very fast. I was able to capture them before I lost sight of them. The images on the lower left. So and that's exactly what we see here. So what I showed you before, actually, if I can get my branding off of here. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so the image is there on the lower left, like I said before. Um, this is pretty authentic. Let me go back here. Oh, looks like we actually have my guy Tim Seanor in the building. Tim Seanor, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was just going over my sighting here. I actually I don't know if you caught the first part of it, but I actually addressed the UAP report and just the fact that there were two things that stood out to me in the report, which were the the fact that they state that the UAP continue to pose a flight safety risk, and then also the fact that they mention balloon-like entities, and this is just out of nowhere that they do this. What just before I get too much further in there, what I know you've had a chance to look at the UAP report yourself. What was your take on it? Like, did anything stand out to you, or
Oh, yeah. I was excited that it finally came out, and there were definitely some pieces of the report that I found interesting. Um, Specifically, I did find the use of balloon and then repeating balloon and including balloon like entities after that. That just kind of tells me that they're seeing a lot of things that kind of are in the realm of what a balloon might be considered, right? And so that might also be um, debris that may get lifted up into the air and be kind of balloon like, such as a garbage bag or something like that.
okay,
And so things that resemble balloons, we shouldn't look too deep into it at that point. Some of the wordage in there can lead you down a rabbit hole, thinking potentially that they mean something otherworldly by that
hmm,
implication. That's not what I drew from that personally.
okay,
There were some great things that I did dig out of it, though. Um, and some of it was in the specific wordage here saying since its establishment in July of 2022, Arrow has formulated and started to leverage a robust analytic process against identifying UAP reporting. And then in the next sentence, it starts and says, once completed, Arrow's final analytic findings will be available in their quarterly reports to policymakers. So, two implications here. First, being that it's saying once completed, Arrow's final analytics. So, that means that at some point, Arrow will come to a conclusion and then be done. So, Arrow will stop at some point. And the other insight here is that there is nothing about how they plan to report to public. They are going to be reporting directly quarterly reports to policymakers. And so that's great that Congress is getting the information, but where's the public oversight? Where is our information?
true facts, true facts. Now I didn't get that deep into it, but I'm glad that you did.
Yeah.
That is a great question. I mean, how do they stand accountable for to the public, and who is the person that is going to be the one giving the information? Like, who do we look to get the information from?
Exactly.
Is it Avril Haines at this point? That's initially who we're looking at currently, right? That's who is to deliver the information.
Yeah. And I think in conjunction with Kirkpatrick, um, because I believe that he is the director of Arrow. So that's just my understanding. I could actually be wrong, but I believe that's where things are at. Now, I know that Arrow is partnering with other companies. So they are collaborating with all sections of the armed forces and sections of government, and they are going to be responsible for historical information as well. But There is a company in particular that is kind of new to me, and it's NIM Aviation.
Right, I saw
And
that.
so they're going to be doing a lot of the actual scientific investigation, if you will, the data collection and analysis. And so they would potentially be delivering a report to ODNI, and along with Arrow, they would look at that and then come up with a deliverable report to Congress, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of a chain of information and a chain of command down there. But again, nowhere in there do we see how they plan to deliver to the public any of this information, which is, again, kind of like the red flag here that we're left with on this report.
Let me ask you this. I mean, truthfully, do you really feel like this is the path for us to get disclosure? Like, the reason why I'm asking you this because I feel like the whole waiting for reports and just kicking the can down the road, I just feel like it's a distraction from getting there. I feel like it's just pacifying us for another year. So we say, okay, now we have this. Oh, we added this. Oh, great to the report. Oh, great. Then we kick it down the path another year. Next thing you know, 5 years has passed and we haven't gotten any further. I mean, that's how I feel. And it may just be because I'm emotionally invested kind of into the subject, because I believe this is for all humanity. And then I feel like the way that they are showing disdain for delivering the information to us, I just feel like you know what I'm trying to say.
I 100% know. And in fact, your sentiment is shared by most of the UFO community because they've been in this for the long haul. And so I'm relatively new to the topic as of 2019. I don't know how long you've been following the topic, but to me, the pace is amazing and it blows my mind. The fact that we have something like this in our hands, and it's the second one, to me, is incredible. It shows that our government is taking this topic seriously. Now, you may get bogged down by some of the wordage, and it may be exactly what you and a lot of people are worried about, that it is a distraction or a way to control the topic and make that narrative a way to disguise funds, a way to disguise tech, or who knows what kind of policies they're trying to hide within this that we may just accept because we're so eager to get to what we consider disclosure. So there's absolutely two ways to look at it. I don't um, personally see it as a negative. I see it as a massive positive towards this topic, because what it's doing is shedding light on something that has for 75 years been mostly disguised and not talked about. And the fact is if you wanted any information, you had to look to documentaries or individuals that had information that would choose to come out, and we weren't always able to vet them properly. But in this day and age, we have access to the internet and a group of people that are at the ready in this community that will do all the vetting for us and bring new information to light. In fact, we know that there must be plants from our government in this community with its finger on the pulse looking for information because our community has a ton of it.
Right. So do you feel then that the end goal for the government then, do you feel that there is a day, whether it's 5 years down the line, that they actually get to the point to where they give us the full disclosure? Do you think that that is ever coming from the government, the full story?
No, no,
Yeah.
I don't feel that is going to come. There may be bits and pieces that they allude to being fact, but if you were to open up the Pandora's box, if you will, of history, there were a lot of people that were hurt and affected in deep ways, and you're looking at massive repercussions and reparations that would probably be demanded, right, by people that were affected. And we just recently saw John Burroughs get awarded his insurance money for his effects that he had directly from, I believe, radiation and some heart issues due to close
Yeah.
contact with UAP, which is massive. So we may see, this case in particular come out in the forefront as far as health effects. Now, in the report, we saw specifically that there were no health effects reported. Well, it sounds like this being such a public case that will come out next year. Now, I didn't want to stray too far from your question. And so I do feel, strongly that this topic is going to remain in the hands of the government. They're, just because they're doing this, by no means do I think that they are going to come out with 75 years of truth. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to point to any, public industry that has metamaterials or any private industry that potentially has been working on anything that is, you know, looking into things that are potentially alien based. I don't think that they're going to admit to any of that. And in fact, I don't think that that's what this report is designed to do. If anything, it feels more like they are trying to shine a light on the potentials of our military counterparts in other countries and their capabilities and publicly ruling them out. Do you know what I mean? So that we can say, hey, China, we're aware of what you have. And so we can publicly bring it out in this realm. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. That's just my kind of take on it, because the first thing we saw was um, reports coming from Ukraine, and then Avi Loeb coming out and discounting them. That reads to me that that's somehow in this narrative, and that they brought in, at the time, he was our top guy because we didn't really have Lou Elizondo, and Lou's really not a specialist in science and tech. So Avi was perfect, and they focused on him. And so Avi was forced to kind of give his opinion on what this could potentially be, with who knows what kind of data he was given. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this too, because before you came in here, I actually also addressed these other point that kind of drew my attention, which was the UAP continuing to pose a flight safety risk. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to talk about that, we've heard it before. They've said it in previous reports that was the case, but as far as that computing to the average person out there, I looked at it like, okay, well, if our military pilots are encountering these things, and these are highly trained pilots as far as evasive maneuvers and things like that. So when it comes down to our commercial pilots, with the threat being there, with the flight safety risk being there, do you feel like, because I feel like there should be more of an urgency behind the government to bring the information out at a quicker pace, based on the fact that we have thousands of people that board planes every day and go into the sky. Now, if we are unsure what these things are or what they're capable of doing, how would you, as the government, allow your citizens to board planes and confront these things at 35,000 feet?
No, I mean, that's real. That is real. And honestly, whenever I fly, I'm looking out the window. I get a window seat just in case, and I don't sleep. I usually watch out my window. I'm just interested. But you bring up an absolutely valid point. And I just would love to place it in this way, that it's a very American way of thinking. And it's not a bad way, but it is the way the United States is addressing this topic. And they're taking it on as a flight risk. And we have Ryan Graves out there talking and pressing this point, that it's imperative that we take notice to that fact. And it is a fact, because we don't know what they are. And they are definitely flying without any kind of um, pattern that any of the pilots can figure out, and they are in their flight paths potentially and could be a hazard. And so it's an absolute reality. And I think that Ben Hansen is also somebody that's on the forefront of this belief that it needs to be addressed as a flight risk, and just simply addressed that way, that we need to get to the bottom of it. And I like the fact that Ryan Graves also kind of pushes the fact that education is very important. so that our pilots can be up there in the skies confident of what they're seeing, and they're educated on what's in the skies and in space, so that they're not misconstruing the facts of perhaps they are looking at Starlink, perhaps they are looking at our space station, or weather that is unusual. If they're trained properly, they won't see those things and think they're UFO and UAP. They'll already know what they are, and they'll have the tech to potentially discount that, so that when they do report something, they can say, hey, I had this training course on UAP and flight hazards, and it was none of those things. So properly educating them with maybe even a course that they can be like, I was trained in this, so now I'm a trained observer in this specifically. Maybe we can up our game.
Ah, man, it just the more I think about it, and it's for the naive and the ones who are unaware and don't want to know. To I think my whole thing is how do you make the average person aware of what's going on and to understand how important it is, just in the various aspects, just as humanity in general, obviously, but just as we spoke about with the flight safety risks. I mean, you have thousands of people that get on a plane every day and they're not even thinking about these things. They really have no idea that this is a real thing that's going on. Because I think that if more people did understand this, then they would potentially second guess taking that flight, or second guess sending that person off, which get having the information to make your own decision is really what I'm talking about here. Like, the American people deserve at least the information so they can determine how they want to go about their day, and instead of you keeping the lid on disclosure and allowing citizens to go out blindly and live their life as if this isn't a thing, as if this thing isn't happening. And that's kind of my approach on it, and kind of really why I'm even speaking about it in this way. It's just I want to get more to a point of how do we get the message to the people to get them to understand what they are potentially looking at, or what they are risking by freely going out into the world and living as they are now.
Yeah. And it's really tough too, because you're walking such a fine line. Because if you push the fear narrative too far, then all the people that are kind of unsure of whether the topic is real feels like you're pressuring them, and
Exactly.
so you got to be careful, and you can't just put out an article that says something that along the lines of UFOs being a flight risk.
Hmm.
That wouldn't make a good headline, because we want to make people aware without the fear. We don't want them to stop flying. Nothing's going to happen, right?
Hmm.
But the fact is that they should be aware that they share the same airspace, and that people could be looking for them while they're up there. Or, hey, we do have strange things that are up there that our pilots, observe. Ask a pilot, hug a
Right.
pilot. Heck, they're dealing with this too. But the
Right.
fact is it is definitely needing to be an issue, but we don't want the fear factor, obviously.
So, looking with you looking at it with your giving your opinion, how what would you feel? And that's the whole mission of this, is to figure out not just this topic, but just figuring out the best way to communicate just this what's going on to the people. Like, what path would you take to make them aware? Like, what would be the steps you would take?
I mean, you're doing it. You're doing it. Finding a way to gently get it across, so that somebody hears your show and they're like, hey, Rob brought up a great point. You should check out his show. And they're like, hey, some of this is something to think about. Maybe I should bring it up at my next meeting at work. And then they're talking about it in our schools. And then they're talking about it everywhere. And we do need the truth to trickle down to our kids, so it's not a shock like it was for some of us. For me, to be smacked with this information as an adult was really rough. I'm still coping, you know. But if we gently, you know, get this message out to the public in a realistic way, in a non-threatening way, in a neutral way, people can make their own minds up. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that people need to re-engage with the topic, because it's been so stigmatized for so long on purpose by our government, um, that they need to readdress it in a realistic way and maybe talk about it openly with friends and family instead of the giggle factor. Because we are still seeing, when you turn it on the TV, the Fox News hosts still chuckle when they talk on this topic, and it is incredibly frustrating. And it just tells me that that is still the temperature in the public, even though we have this report, and they may not know that we are even delving into this. A lot of people don't know that we have a UAP report. They don't know. And let's not forget, it's a UAP report. It's not a UFO report, right? Now, if this had 2022 annual report on UFO, I guarantee it would make a lot more headlines and more people would notice. But UAP was very carefully relabeled, and so it's not hitting the main public's ear.
Okay.
And even when it does, they're like, UAP, what is that? It's not even triggering. Everything is an acronym nowadays. Everything is an acronym. And we're also kind of pre-programmed to think FBI, CIA, UAP, UFO, bollocks, all of it, right? Not into it. If it's coming from my government, it's not going to be real. So we got to get past that. How can we talk about it in a real way, even with our coworkers, without being snickered at? We don't want that. I don't know how to get past that. I still tell people that I'm a documentarian. I don't tell them that I'm specifically researching UFO, just because I don't want to get into it. And then they're like, you're able to film UFO? And then you have to get into all of that. And I'm like, well, no, actually, I'm not. It's incredibly difficult. So, and then, yeah, there's a lot of follow-up to that.
So let me ask you this. So I felt, the my mission in this, and what I've done so far, so as the pre-recorded videos go, was to kind of lay out some of the groundwork to show you as best as I could with the information that has just been out there from the people, that this is a real thing. These things actually are walking the planet, and that they are in these vehicles, or these vehicles belong to them, as I showed in my UAP video. Did you get a chance to see that video?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you gotta check it out.
I will.
I mean,
I will right
I feel
after
like
this.
I feel like I really nailed it.
I might have actually.
Yeah, it's real theatrical, but
Maybe I did.
Purposely I did it in a way to where it only, I felt like if I would have spoke, I would have clouded it up too much. So I kind of just let the visuals speak for themselves, and cool. I think I painted a pretty nice picture. But thing with that is that I'm working with MUFON. Just so you know, I did submit the report to MUFON. I'm working with an investigator right now. Won't say too much about it, but I did. Thing that really frustrated me, and I know he's probably seeing this because he knows I have this channel, but it's just that the initial response from an organization like that, even though I think his mind has changed now since I've showed him some things, but initially came and stated that he thought it was theorized that it could be a string of wedding balloons that had been released from a wedding party. So I looked at it, gave him the benefit of the doubt, because I think what it was, I sent the raw video initially, and if there's no context there, then I could probably see how you came to that determination. But with the information that I provided to him, then it appears that he's taken a different interest into the sighting, and I kind of like reinforced it, like, man, this is authentic. Like, whatever you do, whatever avenues you look at, and I told him as well that I had not taken a look at the air traffic control information or the chatter So I think they may be looking into that right now as well. So I want to get this labeled as an actual UAP, like an authentic UAP sighting, because I know that it was.
Right.
So and yeah.
Well, what I noticed and what made it authentic to me when I reviewed your video was that the numbers changed. The number of things that I was looking at changed throughout the video a number of times. Sometimes there was a certain number, then there were more, then there were less. So things appearing and disappearing, and they're not in a place where they would predictably reappear if they were in a string, right? Because if something was in a string and it just passed through a phase, or my camera didn't pick it up, and the pixels weren't there, and then they would be in a predictable area, even if they were on a string.
In between frame, yeah.
Or if they were in between frame, exactly, or the light didn't pick it up. It would be predictable where it would be. But I can't have 5 more in a couple of frames and then 7 less in the next couple of frames, here and there. And when those numbers come back, I don't ever have the same number. There's not a predictable number. It's not always 33 objects. It's not always 15 objects. You know what I mean? That number changes throughout your video. And I think that for me was the most convincing.
Now and I want to make sure I get these comments in here because I know Greg is chiming. He says, "How come we only see the orbs in fleets, never a saucer or triangle fleet?" It's a great question. I personally think that these orbs are some sort of drone. Truthfully, I think there's some sort of probe or drone. Even the ones that I saw, I feel like those were not manned, that they were unmanned, but they were not of this world for sure.
Right.
So I think that that's what they do. They send out a bunch of probes around and they probe things, and I don't know what they do exactly, but
yeah,
I think they get out there, they span out, and they just do whatever it is they're doing, man. I have no clue.
Right. And my understanding is that if you were to look at some historical stuff that Preston Dennett has put out, there definitely are saucer and triangle fleets reported. But I've heard less of orb fleets. In fact, in my research personally, I've only seen singular orbs. In fact, I've filmed an orb right here over my condo. It was just a single orb dancing at treetops, if you will. Acted like a bubble very much, and then drifted off towards Portland during a rainstorm, no less. But that was just a single orb. Yeah, it was bizarre, was it not? It's just strange. But it's a good question, Greg. I don't know. And here it is. We don't have any solid evidence of any of that, right? And so who knows? That's a good question. It's a great question.
You see, I think that's where, just like you were talking about fine line, I think, it's what does Lou Elizondo say? It's not a threat, but it could be if it wanted to, sort of thing. You know what I mean? And just I think being naive and walking around. So I'll give you just a good example. Like I'm a driver, so I used to take a route that would from Sacramento that would take me through Reno, and I'd go from Reno down to Vegas specifically because it took me through the middle of nowhere, and I like driving that way. And actually, I went to Area 51 one time as well. But if I had the knowledge now, then that I have now, I probably wouldn't have taken those drives. Only because not that anything would have happened, but simply that I would be putting myself at. I would have had to think it out more thoroughly because that would be a drive I would take by myself. You know what I mean? So it's just I think having just the information I think is the key. So not to scare anyone into anything, but I think you should know the flip side to it. Because I'll just give you an example. I was looking at I had sat down, I wanted to think about, you know, if there's from what we know about other sightings and situations, if there's been times where you felt like, okay, no, these guys are real nice. These guys are just definitely nice guys. They're here to save the day. Or has there been times where you say, well, I don't know, I mean, that didn't seem that nice? And I think there's a little bit of both going on. And I just think that in ufology, a lot of the time is only spoken about the positive things that are seen, which are good. We hope as humans, that's how we naturally feel and think, that we would hope that that would be the case, and we would want for that to be the case. But then at the same time, you should understand that there could be another side to it. I mean, because when we look at this, we are adults here. We have children. We have potentially some grandchildren out there, and this is for them. You know what I mean? Like, they have to live the next 60 years at least in this world that we are setting up for them. So if we don't keep our foot on the gas and press the agenda to get to where we need to go, then we're kind of screwing them up or leaving them for a bigger mess to figure out from themselves, or to be blindsided by something that we never sat down to talk about. You know what I mean? So I think, like, in a safe environment where we can talk about all aspects of what this is. Just like, I'll give you an example. Thomas Fessler, he says he says, "Why the f are they here? What the f are they doing?" That resonates with me. Some people that may not resonate with in that way, but that resonates with me because it's a true human feeling, and it's like, yeah, well, why are they here? What are they doing? And that's kind of what I wanted to look at as well. Like, do you have any way, like, just from your thinking and observation, do you lean one way or the other when it comes to what you think they might be here for, or what the purpose could be?
Yeah, I love everything you were just saying. I love it. I love it. Um, I definitely have a feeling, you know. So your audience knows that I had an experience in 2019 with my family, and that experience left me with an impression and a nightly visitation in my dream, if you will. It's actually me going somewhere, if you will. It's not them coming to me, it's me going somewhere simply. And there's no entities. I've never seen aliens in my dreams or waking moments or anything. But um, that experience is in, and I don't like to bring it up, but it's in no way positive. In no way, and never is. There's never like a moment there where I come out feeling elated from the dream. There's nothing positive at all, unfortunately. It's just a deep sorrow kind of feeling, and like it's just one of those things. And now that's my personal experience, right? Um, and the thought of, now this is a totally different subject of the potential that there's an alien presence here on the planet. And I'm curious to your take, even if it's been here forever, you know, and we're just the visitors, and if our DNA really has been blended, as some people are now saying. Um, it brings up a lot of questions, but it's a very terrifying concept to think that they are here with nefarious intent, right? We don't want to think that they're here to hurt us. And,
Hmm.
you know, we do have all these missing mysteries of people and craft. And there's tons of mysteries on this planet that could be very easily explained with the blanket answer of aliens, right? Everything could be answered pretty much by that. Even ghosts or whatever, or afterlife and coming back, you know, everything unlocks with that. If that's what's happening, anything could be, right? And so it's one of those things that you also have to consider everything is potentially linked, like I was kind of saying with ghosts and afterlife and, you know, past lives. And the fact that, you know, we don't know, we don't know as humans, and often it feels like we're the very last ones to know things. We're always being told things by other humans. Where are we getting our information from? It's
There
all
you
coming
go.
from a human origin. And
Yep.
even our Bible, at some point, that we refer to, at some point, it had to be written in a way that a human could understand, at least.
Right.
And so it's all interpretation and it gets very murky. And I know it's all connected and it's way bigger than my mind can figure out. That's for sure. I just kind of go with the public flow that most of the experiences that people have are positive. I hope that that's real. I think that if there are negative experiences, we potentially aren't hearing them publicly because of how negative they are. And they're probably not wanting to put the fear of this in the public's mind.
I actually I had clipped a few things, kind of why I had started the show a little late because I had organized a couple of things. I had a couple of clips I want to show you guys here, just to kind of take you down the path. Now, the original video that I posted, episode 1, is there video proof aliens walk the earth. Now, I'm just going to show this because I just want to know. You've probably seen it before, and I just kind of want to know what you think about the video. Let me get this up here.
Cool.
Okay. Yep, here we go.
It's the creepy video that freaked everyone out.
I'm honestly just kind of scared.
The creature was captured back in June on a motion sensor camera outside a home in La Junta, Colorado. Definitely not human, wrote one mystified observer. Lots of people think it looked like Dobby, the beloved elf from the Harry Potter movies.
Dobby is free.
Another theory? It's a skinny kid wearing underwear on his head.
It's a little creepy to be in the driveway after watching this video. We're here right now.
Vivian Gomez owns the house where the video was shot. And this is Bobby, her 9-year-old son. He's about the same height as the creature in the video. So, could Bobby be Dobby?
Bobby, was that you in the video?
No,
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Definitely.
He has an alibi, his mom. They say they were inside the house watching TV when the creature chicken danced down the driveway at 9 p.m. at night. Still, I was skeptical.
You sure you don't dance with underwear on your head down the driveway at night?
I'm sure.
Our number one suspect is pointing the finger at his friend Montana, the proverbial girl next door.
She does it better.
No way it was me, says Montana.
Who do you think it is?
Bobby with underwear on his head.
You think it's Bobby?
There's only one way to settle this.
I have some underwear to put on your head. Shall we?
Sure.
All right, let's see it.
Here's Bobby doing the chicken dance on a night vision camera. And here he is, side by side with the creature. So, was it Bobby?
Bobby, what do you say?
I am not the one in the video.
Okay, so what do you think? What do you think? I mean, have you seen this before, and what do you think about it?
I think Bobby's adorable. And he's, yeah, I think that whole story was cute. But yeah, I mean, they did come out and admit that this was the kid. So
But now
we
who
don't have to
now
look at that.
who did that though? Because I
I think it was either him or his friend, but they did come out eventually and talk on this. And yeah,
I have to look that
was
up. Okay, because I looked into it and I found a bunch of people debunked it, just saying that it's the kid with underwear.
Yeah.
But then I
and
reached out.
it's so frustrating, isn't it? It's so frustrating when we get inundated with good looking stuff and people that'll stand behind it. And, you just have to think it through and just go sometimes. And I hate saying this because I know a lot of times the story is just as important, to the video evidence or the piece of visual evidence you have.
Mhm.
But there's another time when you have to take that out of the equation and just do a hard analysis on something. For example, Ben Hansen's work on the lights in Kentucky or Wisconsin. Sorry, the Wisconsin Christmas lights, right? It's another case recently that has been outwardly debunked, and even the people that had the light show were like, it's probably our light show. It's frustrating because you don't know what's real and what isn't. and there's so much information, and everybody really would love to have that 15 minutes of fame. You know, Bobby
Mhm.
wants to be on the news, and we don't know his motivations, and you know, he may just not want to back out of it at that point. He smiles every time he answers. That's not what you
That's true. That's
you know, he's
true.
a kid, he could be
Now,
nervous, but at the same rate, go ahead.
so let me ask you this then. What so and I'm gonna look, I have to find that video because when I looked at the video, and it could still be wrong, obviously, but the proportions were too small for a child. I did
The
to
angle. So you've got an angle of the camera. And again, so here's another thing that I've really had a big problem with, and that is surveillance cameras are basically the least expensive lens that you could possibly put, and they're often plastic, in fact,
Mm,
plastic lenses. And so anytime you put it up on your garage and you're looking down, it's going to distort angles and make it hard to determine height. You're going to have to start looking at things around it to make height reference. The way things move can look unnatural. In fact, I had somebody at a conference bring me a video that they were convinced was a ghost on their surveillance camera.
hmm
And they brought it to me, and it looked like a human-shaped figure with an absolute wispy white underneath, and it was just hovering there in the forefront of the camera. But when I looked at it, I asked her immediately, do you want me to look beyond the spider that is weaving its web in your lens house, or
uh,
is it something beyond that? And the person wasn't happy. They said, no, it's that. I'm like, oh, well, that's an insect in very close proximity to the lens,
right.
and you can't see its web. And so it's very easy to be tricked, and my eye's been tricked many times. And so it's only with, you know, those years of experience looking at everything possible that you're able to determine anything. And 99% isn't going to be UFO, but it's that 1% that's real. And I've asked my insiders, you know, is there anything out there on the internet that you can point to that is real and that I can say, hold up and show everyone that this is definitely a real UFO? And this is my insider, right? The guy that should know. And he said, there isn't. There isn't. And I asked, does that include the military release of the 3 military released UFO videos that came out of Lou Elizondo's team? And he said, yes, it includes that. And
Mm,
so, like, everything that we have is ours. Now, that doesn't mean that there's nothing. And he said that. He's like, that, you know, it's a real phenomenon. It's just so hard to capture. You know, and that was a little bit hard to hear. Now, of course, he could be wrong, and I'm sure of it because people out there have posted their real experiences there. So to you, I'm sorry, he probably was not including you and your real experience on the net, and I'm not discounting those because I know they exist. But in his words, he just said that there wasn't anything I could publicly point to that was absolutely 100% verified real.
okay.
Tough.
Well,
That's tough to hear, right?
it is. And on the skin, since we're on debunking, there was a video that was debunked about a year ago. It was the longbow video. I kind of just want
Okay.
to play this in.
Tango 281, taxi north to Tower 2 West Slopes, 1 count.
281, roger.
Wow, are those 3 really fast flying jets up there?
Probably some A-10s or some F-16s. We're not looking up there.
Tango 281, taxi north to Tower 2 West Slopes, 1 count.
281, roger.
Wow, are those 3 really fast flying jets up there?
Probably some A-10s or some F-16s. We're not looking up there. We're not looking up there.
Tango 281, taxi north to Tower 2 West Slopes, 1 count.
281, roger.
Wow, are those 3 really fast flying jets up there?
Probably some A10s or some F-16s. We're not looking up there.
Okay, and the reason why I showed that was because that video had been debunked. Now, are you familiar with that? I guess they called it birds.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why it made me think about it is prior to my sighting, and I list this in my sighting, said when I first see these objects, they're in a ball and they're clustered and they're swarming. They're just doing the swarming sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Made me think of the longbow video. I go back and look at the longbow video, and exactly the way that those things are swarming between each other is exactly what I saw my objects doing before they changed into this formation and flew over. So the reason why I wanted to look at that is because they exhibited the exact same behavior. In my instance, in my sighting, it was initially written off as birds as well. And so to go back to that longbow video, being that they did the exact same swarming, I'm tending to feel like that video may have actually been authentic, actually. And let me see here. So what do you think about that?
I am with you on that one. That one I really didn't get a good feel on, just because of how it was really hard to interpret the video. For me personally, I didn't get a good feel one way or another. That was in my gray box. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or another on that. I thought that was a good, legit video. And I also felt that the fact that you could tell in the dialogue between the people talking and describing what they were seeing that it wasn't birds.
And if I could ask you, Tim, that video there, if you can you present that from your end? The upload speeds here are terrible, so it won't let me add it in.
I've never done that. Sure, let me think. Where is it?
You do present, and then I believe share your screen.
I would, yeah, that's
and
a new one.
It'll give you the option for your tab to pick.
Right. I don't actually have it open on my computer.
Okay. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. So I know it crashed my stream last time I tried it.
Have you seen that video I sent you?
No, I haven't. I'm interested to see it.
Yeah.
It's of the MH370 at the time it went down, or where they found it.
Yeah, it is of what happened to it.
Wow.
And it is from two different perspectives. And it's, military video by what you can tell. And
I gotta see that.
I have passed it off onto my insider, and he wasn't aware of it. And he did have some issues with it, but he is trying to dig into it and see if he can verify it for us. But you guys are getting the first look on something that might be legit. It's just a big mind blower, right? If you know the mystery behind this, a missing airplane.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to while you're doing that, I'll try as well.
Yeah. And so they did find some pieces supposedly of the mysterious plane that disappeared, but this video shows potentially what happened to it, and it does depict it coming into contact with UFO, more than one, in fact.
I'm gonna try to download it here.
Excellent. I mean, I'm not trying to discount all of the videos that have been presented by what my insider has tipped me off at. Yeah. And who knows to what extent his information is valid. And I always question everything, right? And I make my own opinion, and your audience should too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's such a strange area, and you have to always wonder why you're being given this piece of information. Why were we given this report at this time, and whose mind was it designed to change? You know,
Right.
that's always the big question. Is it really all about money?
Oh man, let me see. All right, hopefully this doesn't crash. Let me just try it.
All right.
Close that.
Hey, while you're setting that up, did you get a chance to read Christopher Mellon's key takeaways from the ODNI UAP report?
I didn't actually. I didn't. I know Fessler did a show on it, and I wanted to see his input on it. Let me see.
He had some pretty good notes.
Let's try this. Sharing the screen now. Going for the tab. Okay. And let's try to share it.
Excellent.
Okay. And
all right, so that's the plane that you see in the foreground.
okay.
This is the plane that went missing. And now we see some objects coming up around it.
Wow. Whoa.
Okay, so that's explaining how they captured this footage with that drone.
Exactly.
They did find some wreckage, Greg, yes. All right, so
this another angle here.
Yeah. Got a bird in the foreground there. That's their pointer in the foreground, rather.
Yikes.
And whoop.
Whoa.
Tasty.
Pretty good, man. Pretty heavy. And actually right up my alley because that's exactly what I'm saying here. So when I'm saying concerning to me that UAP continue to pose a flight safety risk, and then it being our commercial pilots that and our loved ones that fly these commercial flights every day. And I reference MH370, not knowing you had that video, but for that exact reason that who's to say how it went down. And not that we haven't had something happen yet. Oh, this is still playing here. Okay. Okay, they were talking about it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, but that was the whole thing. Yeah, I was looking at it that way because I'm just thinking that if they've been up there this long, they're up there all the time. Is it possible something like what we just saw could have happened to any of these flights that we don't know? That what happened? They say something like, "Okay, this little instrument failed, so the whole plane went down and killed everybody on it." Now, I don't know that that's the truth, and I kind of with that video, if that's a real video there, that says a lot, and that should wake a lot of people up.
Yeah, it's powerful to have two different angles, two different sources for that video, and both of them showing three UAP swarming around an airplane and then it just disappearing. And potentially, now here's another interesting note before we say whether this is nefarious or not. That plane appeared to be on fire. Maybe it was in trouble. And the UAP did something in some way to kind of help, kind of like in Travis Walton's case, where he was actually helped in his abduction. He believes that they were helping him get back to health from his close contact. So let's maybe not look at this as a negative, scary incident, but potentially something that was just an interaction. And if it is real,
Yeah.
we need to look into it
So
deeper.
maybe they were having issues, and the UAP saw that and tried to facilitate some help there. Okay,
Potentially, yeah.
I can see. Yeah. I could buy both sides of that, and I think that's the conversation that needs to be had, though. See, and that's the thing. So both sides of that conversation is what needs to be had. That it could be good, but yeah, it could also be that. And just giving the knowledge to people for, just like you said, for the viewer to make their own decision in the end. So let me throw all the information at you, and give you the good, let me give you the bad, and then you determine what you feel at the end of the day, as far as the outlook on that. So that was perfect. I'm glad you sent me that video because it actually is exactly the point that I was trying to make. And what else was I looking at? And we did look at the video. Okay, so I did have a question here, and you asked me this as well, and I can answer it. But what's the likelihood that these things are living here full time?
I love this topic and I ask it all the time. And I get a different answer from everybody. I don't think anybody knows. I personally lean towards if they are here right now, they've been here for a long time. If they've had that potential, they've had it for a long time. Or who knows, maybe they originate from here and their tech is just to go to and from somewhere else. And they call this home base as well. And we're sharing it with them and don't even know. It's a tough one. I do think that it's very possible, but I also think that it's very possible they're living just an element in a dimension just next to us right here. And sometimes their technology seeps through, and sometimes they have the capabilities themselves to use that technology to come through. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, those are good options for sure. I mean, let me ask you this: what would be what for? And this is the thing that always gets to me is the fact that they live, or that we see them going in and out of the water. So we think one of the things they're doing is living underwater here in our own reality. But then we also feel like potentially they could be, the way we see them shift in and out of existence, essentially, that they could be jumping into another dimension. So the thing with me, and that the fact that they've always been here. Now, the only thing with me with that is I think they've definitely been here a long time. I it's just I can't get, if they were here, if this was their planet first, why they would give up land and move into the water, unless they're an aquatic species, is something I can potentially understand there. But if they're air breathing, land walking creatures, why would they give up land, move to the ocean for us to occupy the land? So that just doesn't compute to me. It doesn't make sense right there. But I feel like definitely they've been here a long time, but I feel like that they're visiting because they're in ships. So they're in ships. Ships are for travel. The speeds that they move at aren't speeds that you would traverse a planet with. These are galaxy traversing speeds. And so, it's just a lot of things for me that point to them being from somewhere coming here to visit. But then when we say them, we know that there's multiple species. So maybe one of them is primarily here and the others come to visit. But the fact that they travel in crafts that obviously are there to protect them from elements like space, I would imagine, and just the high speeds, then there's a lot of things that point to them being travelers to the planet. But that's just my speculation.
Yeah, and do you have any deeper thought potentially on whether or not they are spiritual beings? Do you have any gut instinct on that?
On them being spiritual beings, as far as on what level? Just simply consciousness, or
Yeah, like kind of how you and I are the same genetically, but we have a different background and we think differently and have different beliefs. Do you think that they are like that in the way that they're individuals? They have their own thoughts and maybe questions about bigger things than them. You know what I mean? Do you think they live under those same sorts of regimes that we do, with there being a bigger picture even in their world?
that's hard to say because it's looking at something so I guess what is the example that they use, like when something comes into a 2D dimension from a 3D dimension, you can only see a certain part of it. You don't understand what it's connected to or what the purpose is for that. And I think it's almost the same thing with them. If they're as advanced as we think they are, then it's probably just like I just don't see them as far as like societal sort of things. I don't see them having that, or because we're working through that now as human beings and understanding that uh there's a bigger picture, and we're learning it on this level. So I think they learned that a long time ago. I don't think they probably deal with with that sort of thing. I would think. Until I meet one, I won't know for sure though.
And so, what would that mean? How would they interpret the human race then, do you think, based on knowing that we are spiritual beings and like to have individual thoughts and things like that?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because that leans into something I was looking at as far as what we perceive from them to be good gestures or bad gestures, or are they even thinking on that level? So if you can answer that question, then you could probably figure out why they're here then at that point, because I think that's the big question is, why are they here for good intents? Do they even care? Do they even know what good intents are? Do they even know what we think good intents are? Can they align themselves with that? Can they understand it? I don't know that they can. And it's just, if we have to look at it at the examples, we have to look at the examples that we have out there. Yeah, I wrote down a couple things like things that we consider good gestures. So uh from known contact situations, we had the aerial school kids receiving a positive message. Westall kids well said they had a positive sort of message from the ETs. And then the fact that a lot of people talk about the fact that they've been here for many years and they haven't taken over or made any sort of move. Okay, those would be considered good gestures. And if that was all it was, then I could probably say that they probably have some sort of feeling and don't want to do wrong by us, is kind of what I would look at. But there's also instances of indifference where they watch us go to war and they don't step in. Okay. They watch us go through natural disasters that kill thousands and they stand by. So, okay, so maybe they don't have that moral compass to say, hey, maybe we should step in, maybe we should act, maybe we should help them. That kind of puts that in doubt. And then you have instances of bad intent. And I thought, oh, please say I put this in here. I think I did. I had Tom DeLong, and I don't think it's in here. Oh, boy. Okay, but I had Tom DeLong. I had Tom DeLong speaking about an incident where that he was briefed on. I guess he stated also that he saw these images. Actually, let me see. I do have the file here. That works. So let me try this here.
Yeah, well, aliens with ill intent. You had the Kellys in the Hopkinsville case where all those little goblin-looking guys were attacking their farmhouse, and they were firing shotguns at them, and they would just roll backwards and then disappear.
Yes,
and then more would
that.
come at them. That was a bizarre Hopkinsville
And they went out
case.
there. Yeah, they tried to find the bullet holes, and yeah, I saw that.
Yep.
But that's the thing. So Tom DeLong says he speaks about an incident where he's briefed on where in Italy, I guess these houses on a cliff. I'm just giving a general of what it was, but there were houses on a cliff in Italy, and they were catching on fire. It was a lot of them catching on fire, and they found out that it was due to some high energy beam. So they closed off the area. And according to this, they had looked out and saw these UAP out in the ocean in Mediterranean or whatnot, and they stated that he saw a lot of them. I guess one of their helicopters flew out there. He states that the UAP popped up out the water, shot the helicopter down, and dropped back into the water. So, I mean, an incident like that. And then Jeremy Corbell also stated that he had firsthand knowledge of the military firing on UAP as well. So why would that be the case? Why would we be firing on UAP? Is it only, I guess we had a situation where they were being seen in sensitive military zones where we had troops, and they were saying the reason why we were firing is because they were getting too close to the troops. Okay, that could be true. Or is it that there's kind of like a back and forth thing going on at times where they may do things to us and then we turn around and do things to them? If you think about Roswell and all of the crash sites, were those crash sites or were those shoot down sites? It's like, where are we at in that? And if we don't if we can't understand the intent, the reason why they're here, then it's going to be hard just to then understand if we would conflict with them. Because if they're happy lovey, then I didn't see any reason why any of this should happen. But if there are other things going on, then maybe, and then going back to disclosure not happening as quickly as we think it should from the government, then are they protecting us from something? Are they protecting us from the fact that we're fighting these things right now? Or are they, and it's kind of like a weird spot to be in, when you're sifting through all this stuff.
Yeah. You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. And since you're bringing this up, it's a great time potentially to talk about the fact that this topic is going in front of the UN. It was decided just yesterday in San Marino, Italy, where this topic
Wow.
was brought up in front of the International UFO Congress.
Breaking
And they
news.
decided that they're going to move forward with bringing the UFO topic to the UN. And they're going to discuss it. And they haven't done that in 35 years.
Wow.
And so they just decided yesterday that that is going to happen. And it's called Project Titan. And Elizondo and his team have been pivotal in getting that project forward. And so now the world is going to discuss it. And Rob, I'm curious as to what you think the topic is going to be. Is it going to be an American version discussing the threat narrative? It's going to be a Canadian where it discusses their interest in our energy and nuclear? Or is it going to be very European where it's a little bit more historic, showing that they've been interacting for decades? And on top of that question, I'm also curious, who should represent the planet at this point if we're about to have contact?
Well, let's go there then, because
Yeah.
I feel like, truthfully, with it being with the UN taking a look at it, I really feel like, and I'm hoping that this is the time where all the countries come together and paint the complete narrative across the board, not just the US narrative, the Canadian. A lot of countries have a lot of good input and information to add to this to paint the big picture. So I would hope this isn't a time where the United States steps in and wants to take over the whole show, or because we are the world leaders, that we feel like we have to lead the charge on this. I would hope that it's a even playing field for every country involved, that gets to speak on this. And I hope that this is the time where I hope that this is the time where and I was unaware of this. I'm glad you brought this up, but this is like what we need to make that next step, to make it a globally realized thing and a focus. And truthfully, it should be handled probably at that level going forward. If you really want to be frank, I mean, everyone is involved in this, and it's not just a US thing. So I would love to see the UN do exactly what you're saying, but I would love for everyone to put in their piece to the story and do it in front of everyone. And then what was the second thing you asked?
Well, I'm curious, do you think that at the UN, and potentially now we're going to be discussing this everywhere, how we should represent ourselves if we were to make contact?
So if we were to make contact,
Yeah, and who should do that? And also, like, do you want our president, or do you want a UN representative, or should it be you, like Rob?
Well, that's the thing.
Just
it should be. It will probably have to, because we all can't talk. But it should align with the same way we vote today. It should be aligned, but without agendas behind it. So there should be a consensus in a coming together of everyone to determine who would be the best person to speak and what should be said. Um, and that's the thing, and that's kind of where I stand with disclosure and like life after disclosure, is that I feel like when disclosure hits, we don't. A lot of people, I'm not gonna say everyone, but a lot of people will feel like, well, we don't need a particular person over us telling us what to do in this instance. So I think there's going to be a lot more free thinkers and people who will not want to stand for information coming through just one source. And but it's hard to envision that because it's almost unrealistic because we've never seen it, but it's somewhere that we have to go. You know what I mean? So it's to answer that, it's I don't know if I could pick a one person to do it. I don't feel like I could be the person to do it, but I just feel like whoever it is, that it needs to be a person who has the best interests of humanity at heart, who's someone who has shown that, and someone who the people trust in general as a whole. And how about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. It's an incredible concept to be a diplomat for your planet. And collectively, I'm sure the UN would be able to present something that the planet would be happy with. But think back to what we did back in the 70s and 80s when we just put a golden disc out. We just drew a picture of ourselves with our arms out and our mouths open.
Yeah.
And I don't want to present the human race that way necessarily, that we are just open to any contact. And Stephen Hawking warned us against just putting open contact out there. And I think that we should potentially heed that warning. So if there was ever contact, I think all aspects of that interaction should be considered, because we don't want to go in with our hand shown. We're not trying to give up our planet.
Exactly. Well, and that takes us to the next piece, because I feel like I'm hoping, and I've said this before, that our government or governments in general, if they know something that we don't know, if they know that okay, we have to kind of protect our people from what's going on, we have to keep them separated from each other, then I hope at least we're working on some sort of way to defend the planet, in case, not even with this necessarily with what's currently going on, but just from anything out there. I mean, we know there's things out there. Now, it doesn't even have to necessarily be what's here visiting us now, but there could be at some later point a threat that comes from out there. So I just hope that with that being said, with the gold record we sent out there, now everyone knows we're here and who we are, what we are, that we will at least have the ability to protect ourselves. And once, like I stated earlier on today, once we're gone as the elders, once we've cycled out and then the grandchildren are left here, whatever decisions we make today, they're going to have to live with. So, it's going to be tough, but this is kind of the path that I think everyone should get on. The type of questions that you're asking right now, these are the important questions. Who's going to represent us globally? Who's going to, that's what we need to figure out. Not so much, and that's why I say, and go back to all these reports and these kicking the can down the road as being a distraction. Yeah, it's good if these things actually happen and these things come to fruition, but the bigger picture is the global thing, the UN, and the being able to galvanize humanity from every country, every part of the world. And that's the thing, when you look at it, and anyone who does look at it, when you think about it, the people who hold the power versus the population of the planet, we're talking about less than 1% of 1% of 1%. I mean, it's just ridiculous how small the number is. And these are the people that we are currently allowing to make every single decision for the future of your grandchildren, my grandchildren, their grandchildren to come. And I think it's just, we need to start thinking more like what you're saying here. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of the mission that I want to take this channel on, and the people that do come to subscribe and join that movement. I want that to be the thought process, the bigger picture. You know what I mean? I think this is a good start.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Thinking not just for ourselves and thinking for our future generations is massively important. And the fact is that if we do want to elevate ourselves as a species, that's the way we need to think. Because ultimately, if we want to last, we all have to think together as a planet how we're going to cope with everything that comes at us, because it's not just going to be global. Our issues will come from outside our own solar system at some point, whether it's a meteor or something that threatens our planet, or the sun, or who knows? We don't know. But we need to unite at least on how we would solve these issues if they arise. And we need to include a presence from off planet. And it's just one of those things that needs to be addressed on a global platform. The UN is perfect. I'm so proud of the team and everyone involved that they're getting it in front of the UN again. It's absolutely imperative. It needs to be updated information, because we do have some evidence that they're here. Whether you look to the internet, you look to the government, or you look to your own experience, there's evidence of them being here. So we need to elevate the topic, and everyone has had their own experience and has their own opinion, and that all needs to be brought. The fact that the US is concerned about its skies, the fact that Canada is concerned about its energy, and the rest of the planet seems like they're just aware of its presence. And so all aspects of this need to be brought together and discussed openly as a what next sort of project.
And when I was a kid in school and learned about the United Nations and how they were essentially the world government, essentially the global mouthpiece, this is their job. I mean, this is what they're made to do right here. This is represent the world. So I really hope that they do have a good plan in place to represent us all. Because if they get called on for discrepancies and territorial things across the globe, which is silly stuff. But this is really what their job is here, is to take on this exact issue right here and right now. So hopefully the momentum, but I guess here's the thing with that, being that they are a like who do they end up being accountable to? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who is the UN accountable to? Who can make the same way we're doing with our government? So I would hope that it's a little different with them, but I would anticipate it would probably be similar to what we have our structure here. What do you think about that?
It's very democratic. They look at topics that affect all the nations that show up to the UN, and they take each topic and address it. And all sides of it are usually addressed. And my understanding in the past is that they're able to come up with peaceful ways to handle these topics in ways that are agreeable to every nation. Good. And so it's the perfect venue to address this topic. And again, they did it once before, almost 35 years ago. And so it is time to update that information. It's the perfect time. It is a pressure pot right now. This topic, it is getting pressurized. And we need to deal with it before it starts to polarize people within the group and in the public. We don't want people polarized one way or another on this topic. We don't want heavy believers. We don't want heavy skeptics and non-believers. We want people to just be open to information, because at this point, we don't publicly know one way or another. And let's just leave it at that. We may independently and individually know, but this topic is very much still under scrutiny, and we need to be gentle with it. We can't force it down anyone's throat. So the way it's being handled in the UN is really the way it should be handled in all countries. But at least for now, we're going to see some massive progress with this topic in that fashion.
Man, well, that's great news. That's actually great
Yeah.
news to end on too, man. I really appreciate you coming through. And then we did
So
an hour
fun.
and a half today. This is
Great.
my first live. I wanted to get out here and just
All right.
Greg O'Brien showed up and I love it. And anybody else that was out there, I appreciate it. It was great. We will be doing these for sure, at least every Friday. If it picks up, then we're going to add more days to the week. I still want to continue with the pre-recorded content as well, because I feel like I get a chance when I do those, I get a chance to get right to the point without any extra fluff. So looking forward, though, we will be going live. So I would like to get as many people in here to give their opinions or speak on any of the topics that may have been talked about in the past or anything that you may have on your mind. Join this mission to progress humanity, move us forward. Disclosure is great. Once we get it, though, then what? A lot of people and there's a lot of shows out there that may not know what to do once disclosure comes. But I think the road is to gather humanity, galvanize us all, and formulate a plan for where we go next. So Tim, Seanor, Anonymous Rex, totally appreciate you coming in, man. Anytime too, dude. You're just the bomb. You always have great information as well. Greg, like I said, thank you for coming through. Northern Downpour came through as well. Thank you, Northern. I'll go ahead and get ready to end the stream now. If you will hold for a minute, Tim,
Sure.
I'm gonna go ahead and get this outro and then we'll get out of here.
All right.
Thank you, man.